Now, the elimination method that I showed you on Friday, basically all we did was take the two equations, add them together, and something eliminated. However, that doesn't always work out that nice and neat. Sometimes we may have to add an extra step before we can use that elimination, which is what we're going to run in today. So if we take a look at number 14 over here, the system we're working with is 3x plus 2y equals 23, and 2x minus 8y equals 62. Now, right now, as it is, if I add those two equations, the x's will not eliminate, nor will the y's eliminate. So we're going to add one little bitty extra step, and it's right there in front of us. It says right here that we're going to multiply that first equation by a positive 4. We're going to multiply the first equation by 4, and you'll see why here in a second. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to take everything in the first equation, and we're just going to multiply it by 4. So 3x times 4 is going to give us a 12x. 2y times 4 is going to give us an 8y. And 23 times 4 is what? Put that in your calculator. 23 times 92. 92. Now again, why did we multiply the first equation by 4? Well, look what's going to happen now when I add these two equations together. When I add these two equations, 12x plus 2x is going to give me a 14x. An 8y plus a negative 8y is 0. We just eliminated the y values. So the whole reason behind multiplying the first equation by 4 was so that the y's would eliminate. Now we got an 8 in front of those y's, which is eliminating those y's. Let's go ahead and add up the 92 and the 62. 92 plus 62 is, put that in your calculator if you don't know, 92 plus 62 is 154. I'm solving for x, so the next thing I need to do is divide by 14. So 154 divided by 14 is going to be a what? 154 divided by 11. So the x value is 11. We're halfway done. We know what x is. X is 11. But now we need to turn around and figure out what y is. So we're going to take that 11, and we're going to substitute it back in for one of these x's. It's my choice. I can use the first equation or the second. I'm going to use the first equation just because it looks easier for me. So there's the first equation with 11 substituted in for x. Now I'm going to solve for the y. 3 times 11, that's 33. Next thing I'm going to do is subtract 33. So that's going to leave me with 2y equals 23 minus 33 is a negative 10. Divide by 2. And a negative 10 divided by 2 is going to be a negative 5. Therefore, we have both the x and the y value. Of course, we need to write it as an order pair. And that order pair is going to be 11, negative 5. So there's my solution to this system. So I had to add one little extra step, and that was to multiply the first equation by 4. That way the y's would eliminate. So you may have to add that extra step. All right, let's go to the next one here. We got two more examples that we're going to look at, starting with number 15 here. Just like number 14, right now, nothing's going to eliminate. So I need to multiply one of the equations by something. One of the equations by something. Well, if I want to get rid of these x's, I'm going to need the same number in front of the x. Right now I have a 3 here and a 1 here. So anybody got a suggestion on what I can multiply by? The bottom one by what? A negative 3. Let's try that out. Let's take the bottom equation. Let's multiply it with a negative 3. First equation, I'm not going to touch that. I'm just going to leave that one alone. There's the first equation. It's the bottom one that I'm multiplying by negative 3. So negative 3 times x is a negative 3x. A negative 3 times 5y is a negative y. And a negative 3 times 62, what's a negative 3 times 62? Negative what? Put in your calculator. 186. All right, let's see if that's going to work. We multiplied by negative 3. Are the x's going to eliminate if I add those two equations together? Absolutely. 3x plus a negative 3x is 0. We just eliminated the x's, which was the whole idea behind multiplying by negative 3. You got 2y plus a negative 15y. That's a negative 13y. 4 plus a negative 186. 4 plus a negative 186 would be a negative what? 182. All we got to do now is divide by negative 13. And a negative 182 divided by a negative 13 is going to turn out to be a positive 14. We're halfway done. We know what the y value is. It's a positive 14. Now we're going to take that 14 and we're going to substitute it back in for one of these y's up here. The choice is mine. I can use the first equation or the second. As a matter of fact, I can even use this new equation that we came up with. Probably going to stay away from that one though because the numbers are a little bigger than I like working with. So I'm going to use one of the original equations. I'm going to use the first one. I'm going to take out y and replace it with 14. I'm using the first equation. I'm going to multiply 2 times 14, which is a 28. I'm going to subtract 28. 4 minus 28 is a negative 24. Divide by 3. Negative 24 divided by 3 is going to be a negative 8. So now you got both parts. All you got to do is write it as an ordered pair. So Samantha, how are we going to write that as an ordered pair? What number goes first? Which one? What goes first in the ordered pair? The x or the y? X. And what is the x? Negative 8 and 14. So make sure you write the answer like this. All right, so there's our answer, our solution to the system. Go on to number 16. Same idea. We're going to have to take one of the equations, multiply it by some number, so that we can eliminate either the x or the y. All right, so Alexander, help me out here. What are we going to multiply by? I'll give you a hint here. I want to try and get rid of the y values. And right now I've got a 2 in front of this one, and I've got an 8 in front of this one. Is there any way we can get those two to match up? Is there any way I can multiply this 2 by something so that I would end up with an 8 like this one down here? There you go. We're going to take this top equation, and we're going to multiply it by 4. Top equation multiplied by 4. So let's see here. 4 times 3x is going to give me 12x. 4 times a negative 2y is a negative 8y. 4, what's that? Well, that's a good question. We can multiply it by either a positive or a negative. Now, in this particular case, we're using a positive 4. Now, that is going to affect whether we add or subtract. So right now, I'm going to leave it as positive 4. But yes, I could have very easily used a negative. 4 times negative 10. 4 times negative 10 is a negative 4. Now remember, we're not doing anything to the second equation. It's going to stay exactly like it is. Second equation stays. Now I want you to notice something here. If I try and add those two equations together, a negative 8 plus a negative 8 is not going to be 0. Instead, it's going to be a negative 16. It's not going to eliminate it. So what I'm going to do instead is, instead of adding the two equations, I'm going to subtract the two equations. And I think this question came up on Friday. Am I always going to add? The answer is no. You may have to subtract depending on what eliminates those variables. All right, so let's go ahead and subtract everything. 12x minus 4x would be a what? 8x. A negative 8y minus a negative 8y is 0. That was the whole idea, getting rid of those y's. Negative 40 minus 8. Negative 40 minus 8 would be a negative 48. And of course, to finish this off, we're going to divide by 8. So negative 48 divided by 8 is going to be a negative 6. So we have half of our answer. We know the x value is a negative 6. So we're going to take that negative 6 and we're going to plug it into one of these equations up here. I can use any one I want. I think I'll use the second one. I'm taking out the x, replacing it with a negative 6. And I'm going to solve for the y. So 4 times a negative 6 is going to give me a negative 24. Now I'm going to add 24 to both sides. So let's see here, 8 plus 24. 8 plus 24 would be a what? 32. And finally, we can divide by negative 8. So 32 divided by negative 8 would be a negative, what? 4. Negative 4. So there's the other half of our answer. So the order pair we're going to end up with is negative 6, negative 4. There's our solution. So this is still elimination method. One little extra step, and that's to multiply one of the equations by some number. That way we eliminate either the x or the y. All right, let's go ahead and move on here. Now, those last 3 examples we just looked at required us to multiply one of the equations by some number. In some cases, you may need to multiply both equations by some number in order for something to eliminate. So that's what we're going to look at next. So I'm going to go ahead and skip this example, and we're going to go ahead and look at number 17. Let's take a look at number 17. Now, right now, if I add those 2 equations, nothing's going to eliminate. If I subtract those 2 equations, I'm still not going to get anything to eliminate. So what I'm going to have to do is figure out some way to get either these x values or the numbers in front of the x to match up, or the numbers in front of the y's to match up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the first equation, and I'm going to multiply it with a 3. But I'm also going to take the second equation and multiply it by a 4. Now, why the heck did I choose 3 for the first equation and 4 for the second equation? Can anybody see it? Why did I choose those 2 numbers? What is that?
Switch.
They switch. What am I going to end up when I multiply 3 times the 4x? 12. What do I get when I multiply 4 times the 3x? 12. They're going to match up, right? Which is the whole idea here, get them to match up. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to take the first equation, multiply it by 3. So here we go. 3 times 4x is 12x. 3 times 5y is 15y. And 3 times 70 is 210. Let's take the bottom equation and multiply it with a 4. So 4 times 3x is x. 4 times a negative 2y is a negative 8y. And 4 times 18. What's 4 times 18? 72. So again, notice the whole idea there was to get those numbers in front of the x's to match up. Now I got to decide what's going to eliminate those x's, adding the 2 or subtracting. What would get rid of the x? Adding or subtracting? Subtraction. It has to be subtraction. 12x plus 12x would give me a 24x. That's not what I want. I don't want any x's. So we're going to subtract everything. 12x minus 12x, of course, is 0. 15y minus a negative 8y. Be real careful. Put that in your calculator. What's 15y minus a negative 8y? 23y. And 210 minus 72 is? 210 minus 72?
138.
138. Is that right? 138. Let's solve for the y. Let's divide by 23. So 138 divided by 23 is going to leave us with a what? 6. Positive 6. So we're halfway done. We know what the y is. It's 6. Let's come over here and figure out what x is. Let's go ahead and take that 6 and plug it into one of the equations. I'm going to use the second equation. First thing I'm going to do is multiply. Negative 2 times 6 is a negative 12. Now I'm going to add 12 and 18. 18 plus 12 is going to give us a 30. And finally divide that by 3. 30 divided by 3 is 10. So now I've got both numbers. I just need to write it as an ordered pair. And that ordered pair is going to be a 10, 6. There's my solution. That is my ordered pair, 10, 6. All right, let's do one more here, number 18. Number 18. Again, right now as it stands, if I add or subtract, nothing's going to eliminate. So I want to try and figure out some way to get either the x values to match up or the y values.
Sure, yeah. How will we know, like on the test, if you ever have one of these, how will we know which ones to add, subtract, and multiply?
Well, again, it's whatever's going to eliminate one of the variables. Notice over here on number 17, if I would have added those two, that's not going to eliminate it. I would have ended up with 24x. That's not going to help me out. So it has to be subtraction. So you'll know whether to add or subtract based on, do you get 0 x's or do you get 0 y's. Okay. We want no more x's and we want no more y's.
And then what about the starting point, like to begin with, to get the new equation? How do we know?
Very good question. How do you know? Well, let's take this number 18 for example. Let's say I want to get rid of these x's right here. The only way that's going to happen is if these two numbers are exactly the same. So we got to figure out what can I do so that these numbers in front of the x's are exactly the same. Well, I'm seeing a 12 right now, and I'm also seeing an 8. So I've got to figure out what can I multiply by so that these two numbers are exactly the same. I'm thinking 24. I can get a 24 out of this, and I can also get a 24 out of this one here, right? Here's what I'm talking about. If I multiply the first equation by a 2, 2 times 12 is going to give me a 24. But I also want a 24 down here on the second equation. 2 times 8 is not going to give me a 24. What do I need to multiply to get that 24? 3. So this is how I determine what numbers to use. It's whatever gives us the same number in front of the x. Now that's not the only option. There's a couple of other options we could have used as well. It doesn't have to be 24. Matter of fact, it didn't even have to be the x. I could have also tried to get rid of the y's. So there's many, 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 many options. All right, let's go ahead and multiply the top equation by 2. 2 times 12x is 24x. 2 times a negative 7y is a negative 14y. And 2 times 59. What's 2 times 59? 118. So there's the first equation. Second equation, we're going to multiply it with a 3. So 3 times 8x is 24x. 3 times 11y is a negative, actually it's a positive 33y. And 3 times a negative 39, put that in your calculator, 3 times a negative 117. All right, so obviously we got a 24 in front of the x. Now we got to decide, are we going to add them or are we going to subtract? Olivia, what do you think? Add or subtract those two equations? What's going to get rid of these x's here? Adding them or subtracting them? 24 plus 24 is going to give me a 0, or 24 minus 24 is going to give me minus. There you go. We're going to subtract the two equations. It's got to be subtraction. So when you have 24x's and you take away 24x's, you get a 0. Subtract everything else though. Negative 14y minus 33y is a negative what? 47. 118 minus a negative 117 is what? 118 minus negative 117. Put in your calculator. 235. Now we're going to divide by negative 47. So 235 divided by negative 47 is going to give us a negative 5. So we got half of our answer. We're going to take that negative 5 and we're going to go back and substitute it in from one of these equations. I guess I'll use the second equation. So let's go ahead and multiply. 11 times a negative 5 is a negative 55. Add 55 to both sides. Negative 39 plus 55 is, what is that? 16. We're almost there. Divide that 16 by 8. 16 divided by 8 is a 2. Of course, we're going to write it as an ordered pair, and that ordered pair is going to be a 2, negative 5. So our solution in number 18 would be the ordered pair 2, negative 5. All right, we're going to go ahead and stop right there.